The night Maria played the piano became a memory no one in that house could forget. The guests spoke of it for weeks. The maid, who turned out to be a hidden artist. Some said her music was better than anything they had heard from trained performers. Others said it wasn't just her skill, but the feeling behind every note that made it unforgettable. For Maria, that night felt both wonderful and strange. For years she had hidden her past, afraid of what it might bring. But once her fingers touched the keys, all the fear vanished. It was as if the music had been waiting inside her all this time, quietly breathing until it was finally free. The next morning, the house was quiet. Maria thought perhaps everyone had forgotten already. She started her chores early, as usual, sweeping the floors and polishing the furniture. But when she entered the dining room, the master of the house was there, sipping his tea. He looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Maria." "Good morning, sir," she replied softly, unsure what to expect. He put down his cup. "You gave us all quite a surprise last night." "I don't think anyone has ever played our piano like that," Maria smiled shyly. "I'm sorry if I caused trouble." "Trouble?" he said with a laugh. "You brought life into this house. It's been a long time since I've seen everyone so moved." Maria didn't know what to say. She simply bowed her head. Later that day, Clara came looking for her. She found Maria in the garden, trimming the roses. "Everyone is still talking about you," Clara said, sitting on the stone bench. Maria chuckled softly. "I wish they would stop. I am not used to being the center of attention." Clara looked at her carefully. "You should be. You deserve it." Maria shook her head. "No, my dear. I only played what I felt. That's all." There was a moment of silence before Clara spoke again. "I want you to teach me properly, not just a few pieces. I want to learn how to play like you do." Maria smiled. "To play like me, you must learn to listen to your heart. Can you do that?" Clara nodded firmly. "I'll try." And so, from that day forward, their lessons began in earnest. Every evening after Maria finished her chores, she would sit with Clara at the piano. She taught her not only how to read the notes, but how to feel them, how to understand what the music was saying. Sometimes she would ask Clara to close her eyes and imagine what the song was trying to tell her. "The piano speaks," Maria said one evening as the golden sunset filled the room. "But it only speaks to those who are willing to listen." Clara smiled. "You talk about music like it's alive." Maria nodded. "It is. When you play with feeling, it becomes part of you." Their bond grew deeper with each passing day. Clara began to see Maria not just as the family's maid, but as a true mentor, even a friend. And for Maria, teaching Clara brought a quiet joy she hadn't felt in years. But outside their small world of lessons and melodies, not everyone saw things the same way. Some of the servants whispered about Maria. "She's getting too close to the family," one said. "They'll forget she's just a maid." Another replied, "Maybe she's planning to leave us and become famous again." Maria heard the rumors, but she ignored them. She wasn't playing for fame or pride. She played because the music made her feel alive again, and because she wanted Clara to feel the same. One afternoon, as Maria and Clara practiced, the master of the house entered the room quietly. He stood by the door listening as they played a duet. When they finished, he clapped softly. "That was beautiful," he said. "You two sound wonderful together." Clara grinned. "Maria's teaching me everything she knows." The man smiled at Maria. "Then I owe you more than I can ever repay." Maria shook her head. "There is no debt, sir. Teaching her is my honor." He paused for a moment, thoughtful. "Maria, would you consider performing again? Not for a grand audience, just at the upcoming charity concert in town. It's for the Children's Hospital. I think your story could inspire many." Maria froze. "Me? Perform again?" Clara's eyes lit up. "Yes, you should. Everyone should hear you." The mansion buzzed with energy that week. Everyone was busy preparing for the family's grand charity dinner, the biggest event they hosted every year. Important guests were coming from the city, including musicians, artists, and donors who supported Clara's upcoming recital. The halls were filled with workers arranging flowers, shining glasses, and testing the sound system. Maria moved quietly between rooms, polishing, dusting, setting up candles. She had done this many times before, but this time something felt different. She could feel the tension in the air, not just in the house, but inside her own chest. Clara had been practicing day and night for weeks, trying to perfect the same piece she would play at the dinner. Every wrong note made her frustrated. Every small mistake made her start over again. Maria often listened from a distance, wishing she could help, but afraid to cross the line again. The night before the event, Clara came to Maria's small room in the servants' wing. She looked anxious. "I don't know if I can do this," she said. "The more I practice, the worse I sound." Maria put down the pillow she was sewing. "You sound wonderful," she said softly. "You only doubt yourself because you care." Clara shook her head. "You don't understand. Everyone will be watching. My father invited a famous pianist too. What if I embarrass him?" Maria looked at her kindly. "Do you remember what I told you before? You are not playing for them. You are playing for the music." Clara smiled a little. "That's easy for you to say. You don't have to perform in front of all those people." Maria's eyes softened. "Once I did. And I was afraid, just like you. But fear disappears when your heart begins to sing." Clara stared at her. "You really did perform, didn't you?" Maria nodded quietly. "A long time ago." The next evening came faster than anyone expected. The house shone like a jewel under the night sky. Candles flickered in every corner, and the garden glowed with golden lights. The guests arrived one after another, men in dark suits, women in shimmering dresses. The air smelled of perfume and roasted food. Maria worked from the moment she woke up. She carried trays, filled glasses, and checked every detail twice. But her heart wasn't only focused on her duties. She couldn't help glancing toward the grand piano in the main hall, where Clara would soon perform. When the guests were seated, Clara's father gave a short speech about the importance of art and youth talent. Then he turned to his daughter and said proudly, "Now Clara will play for us." The room fell silent. Clara took her seat at the piano, her face pale but determined. She began to play. The first few notes were soft and steady, but then her fingers slipped. She paused for a second, trying to recover, but the moment had already broken her rhythm. Her breath grew uneven. The sound lost its shape. From the corner of the room, Maria could see the panic in Clara's eyes. The guests whispered among themselves politely. Clara tried again, but her hands trembled. The melody came out wrong. She stopped completely, staring at the keys. The silence in the room felt heavy. Her father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's all right," he said, forcing a smile. "Take your time." Clara stood up, her eyes wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and ran toward the staircase. The hall was filled with uneasy murmurs. A few guests tried to lighten the mood, but the disappointment was clear. The father excused himself to check on his daughter. The mother looked around helplessly. Maria's hand shook as she held the tray. She wanted to comfort Clara, but she couldn't leave her post. Her heart ached. She knew exactly what the girl was feeling: the fear, the shame, the wish to disappear. As the guests began chatting again, a faint sound rose from the other end of the hall. At first, no one noticed. It was a soft note, then another, gentle and uncertain. The voices slowly faded. Heads turned toward the piano. Maria was sitting there. No one had seen her walk up to it. She didn't look around or say anything. She simply placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The music that filled the room was unlike anything they had heard before. It was calm and pure, but full of emotion. Every note seemed to carry a story, of joy, of loss, of hope. The melody rose and fell like a heartbeat, filling every corner of the hall. The guests sat frozen. The clinking of glasses stopped. Even the servants paused in their tracks. Maria's hands moved with grace and confidence as though the piano had been waiting for her all its life. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful. She played not to impress anyone, but because she could no longer hold the music inside her. When she reached the final notes, the room was silent. Then someone began to clap softly. Another joined, then another. Within seconds, the hall erupted in applause. Maria opened her eyes, startled. She stood up quickly, her cheeks flushed. "Forgive me," she murmured. "I didn't mean to—" "Wait," said a voice. Everyone turned. It was Clara, standing at the top of the staircase, tears in her eyes. She walked slowly down, never taking her eyes off Maria. "You," she said, her voice trembling. "You were the one who was meant to play tonight." Maria shook her head. "No, Miss Clara. It was your moment." Clara smiled through her tears. "You saved it." The father came forward, astonished. "Maria," he said, "how did you learn to play like that?" Maria hesitated. She could have lied, but something inside her said it was time to tell the truth. "Before I worked here," she said quietly, "I was a pianist. I used to perform, but my family needed me and I left that life behind." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some guests recognized her name. One older man gasped. "Maid Alvarez, you played at the conservatory gala years ago." "I was there." Maria looked down, embarrassed. "That was a lifetime ago." The man shook his head. "The music you played tonight? It hasn't aged at all." Clara's mother stepped closer, her voice soft. "Why didn't you tell us?" Maria smiled gently. "Because I came here to work, not to remember what I lost." Clara took her hand. "But maybe you didn't lose it. Maybe it was just waiting for the right moment to come back." The guests clapped again, this time louder, not out of politeness but out of genuine admiration. Some even stood. Maria's eyes glistened and she bowed slightly, unsure what else to do. For the rest of the night, the air in the mansion felt different. People spoke in hushed, respectful tones. The story spread from one guest to another, the maid who was once a piano prodigy. Later, when most guests had gone, Clara and her parents sat with Maria in the now quiet hall. The father looked thoughtful. "You've been part of this home for years, and yet we never knew." Maria smiled softly. "Some stories hide themselves until the right time." Clara looked at her. "Will you teach me again?" "Not as a maid and student, but as one musician to another." Maria hesitated, then nodded. "If you promise to play from the heart," Clara laughed. "I promise." That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Maria stayed alone with the piano. She touched the keys lightly and began to play once more, this time not for anyone else, just for herself. The moonlight streamed through the windows, falling across her face. She closed her eyes and smiled. After so many years of silence, she finally felt alive again. After that afternoon, something quiet but powerful changed between Maria and Clara. The next morning, Clara waited for Maria near the sitting room with a small smile on her face. The maid walked in carrying a basket of clean towels and froze when she saw the young girl sitting at the piano. "Good morning," Clara said softly. "I was hoping you could show me that part again." Maria hesitated, glancing toward the hallway. "I don't want to get in trouble," she whispered. "Please," Clara said, lowering her voice. "No one will mind. I just want to learn." Maria looked at her hands, then at the piano. "Just a few minutes," she said quietly. She sat down and began to play the tricky section slowly, explaining how each note should feel, not just sound. Clara watched her closely, amazed at how calm and natural her hands looked. The melody that had once felt stiff and hard now flowed smoothly. "You make it look easy," Clara said with a laugh. Maria smiled. "It becomes easy when you stop thinking about every mistake." For the next few weeks, they continued like this, short moments between Maria's chores and Clara's lessons. Sometimes they met early in the morning before the teacher arrived. Other times in the evening when the house was quiet. Maria never played more than a few pieces. She didn't want anyone to hear her and ask questions, but Clara could see there was something deep inside Maria's music, something more than skill. It was feeling, warmth, and peace. One afternoon, while the cook and the gardener chatted near the kitchen, Clara asked, "Did you really learn by yourself?" Maria paused. Not exactly, she said softly. When I was young, I studied at a music school for a few years. Clara's eyes widened. A real music school? Maria nodded, smiling faintly. Yes, I thought I would spend my whole life performing. But life had other plans. What happened? Clara asked gently. Maria didn't answer right away. She wiped the piano keys with a soft cloth and looked out the window. My father became ill, she said at last. I had to take care of my family. There was no money for lessons. I left everything behind. Clara lowered her head. I'm sorry, Maria shrugged. It's all right. Life gives us different songs to play. For a moment, neither spoke. The sunlight fell across the piano, lighting up the dust in the air like tiny floating stars. Maria smiled faintly, her eyes far away. That night, when everyone was asleep, Maria couldn't rest. She sat by her small window, looking out at the moon. She could almost hear the sound of her old piano, the one she had played as a young girl in her parents' home. She remembered how her mother used to hum along and how her father clapped at the end of every song, no matter how simple. The memory warmed her, but it also hurt. In the morning, the cook noticed Maria seemed quieter than usual. You look tired, she said, handing her a cup of tea. Maria smiled weakly. Just thinking too much, I suppose. Well, don't think yourself sick, the cook laughed. We have a busy evening ahead. The family is having guests again. Maria nodded. She didn't know that the night's dinner would bring something unexpected. By evening, the house was glowing with lights and laughter. The guests wore elegant clothes and soft music played from a speaker in the corner. Clara was expected to perform a short piece for everyone. It was the same one Maria had helped her with. Before the dinner started, Clara found Maria in the hallway. I'm nervous, she whispered. What if I mess up? Maria smiled gently. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes before you start. Remember, you're not performing for them. You're playing for the music itself. Clara nodded slowly, trying to believe it. When her turn came, everyone grew quiet. She sat at the piano, her hands trembling slightly. But as soon as she began to play, her body relaxed. The notes flowed just like they had when Maria played beside her. When she finished, the guests clapped warmly. Clara smiled, and a real smile, not a polite one. From across the room, she found Maria's eyes and mouthed, Thank you. After the guests left, the master of the house praised his daughter, saying, You're improving every day. That teacher of yours must be doing something right. Clara looked at Maria but said nothing. She wanted to tell her father the truth, that the quiet maid had been the real teacher, but something stopped her. She wasn't sure how he would react. That night, Clara went to the kitchen and found Maria washing dishes. They loved it, she said excitedly. All because of you. Maria shook her head. Because of you. I only showed you what was already there. Clara leaned against the counter, still smiling. You know, I think you should play for them one day. Maria froze. No, she said quickly. That's not my place, but why not? Clara pressed. You're better than all of us. Maria looked at her with gentle eyes. There are things you don't understand yet, she said quietly. Sometimes people don't want to see who we truly are. They only see where we stand, Clara frowned. That's not fair, Maria smiled sadly. No, but it's life. In the following days, Clara's curiosity grew stronger. She wanted to know more about Maria's past. One afternoon, while Maria was cleaning the study, Clara came in holding an old record. Do you know this piece? She asked, playing it on the turntable. It was a slow, emotional piano sonata. Maria froze the moment the first notes began. She recognized it immediately. It was a piece she had performed long ago at her first and only public recital. Yes, Maria whispered. I know it. Clara looked at her carefully. You played this before, didn't you? Maria nodded slowly. A long time ago. How did it feel? Maria smiled faintly. Like speaking to someone who understood every secret in my heart. Clara didn't say anything more. She could see the pain and longing behind Maria's calm voice. That night, she searched online using the name Maria Alvarez Pianist, but found nothing. It was as if Maria's music had vanished from the world. Meanwhile, Maria continued her quiet work, pretending nothing had changed. But every time she passed the piano, her fingers itched to play. Sometimes, when she was alone, she would touch the keys just for a second. One note, soft and quick, and in before stepping away again. One evening, the gardener came into the kitchen and mentioned seeing Maria near the piano after everyone had gone to bed. "I thought I heard music," he said with a grin. "Sounded beautiful, too." The cook laughed. "Our Maria? She barely speaks, let alone plays." Maria blushed and shook her head. "It must have been the wind," she said quietly. Everyone laughed, and the moment passed. But Clara, who overheard from the hallway, said nothing. That night she crept downstairs after everyone was asleep. She stood near the sitting room door and waited. At first there was silence. Then very faintly, she heard it, and soft notes, one after another, floating through the still air. Clara peeked through the half-open door and saw Maria sitting at the piano, her face calm, her eyes closed. The music was like a whisper full of emotion, sadness, hope, and beauty all at once. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move until the last note faded. Then she quietly went back upstairs, her heart pounding. For the first time, she understood who Maria really was, not just a maid, but a woman carrying a story far bigger than anyone in that house could imagine. And though she didn't know it yet, that discovery would change everything. Maria had been working in the big white house on the hill for almost 3 years. Every morning before the sun came up, she walked the same narrow road lined with tall pine trees, her worn shoes crunching softly on the gravel. She always arrived before anyone else, quietly unlocking the side door to the servants' quarters. Inside, she tied her apron, pushed back a loose strand of hair, and began her day. The family she worked for was kind enough but busy. They rarely noticed the quiet maid who moved like a shadow between rooms. Maria dusted the old paintings, polished the silverware, and kept the kitchen spotless. She didn't talk much, only smiled when someone greeted her. The cook once said she had the politeness of a woman who carries secrets, but nobody ever asked what those secrets were. In the evenings, when her work was done, Maria liked to sit in the small garden behind the house. She would watch the orange light fade behind the hills and listen to the faint sound of the piano from the music room upstairs. That sound always stopped her heart for a second. It reminded her of a world she had left long ago, a world she never spoke of. Inside the house, the piano was usually played by the family's daughter, Clara. She was 17, full of dreams but easily frustrated. Her teacher had been preparing her for an important recital in the city, a performance that could open doors for her future. Clara had talent, but her heart wasn't steady. Sometimes her fingers hit the wrong notes because she was too nervous or too proud to listen carefully. Maria often passed by the music room while cleaning the hallway. She would slow down near the door, her broom moving slower and slower as she listened. The sound of the piano filled the hallway, sometimes strong and bright, sometimes messy and full of anger. When Clara made a mistake, Maria winced quietly, whispering the right rhythm under her breath. No one noticed. One afternoon, Clara slammed the piano lid shut with a loud bang. Her teacher had just left, disappointed again. "I can't do it," Clara shouted to herself. "I'll never be good enough." She stormed out, not seeing Maria standing quietly at the end of the hall. The maid's hands trembled slightly as she watched the girl run off. Maria finished her chores in silence. But when the house grew still that night, she walked softly into the sitting room. There was an old upright piano there, half forgotten and a little dusty. She hesitated, looking around to make sure no one was watching. Then she sat down. Her fingers touched the keys, cold, uneven, but familiar. She pressed one note, then another, and suddenly the air changed. Soft music floated through the empty room. It wasn't perfect. The piano was out of tune, and her hands were slower than they once had been. But the melody was gentle, full of feeling. Maria played for only a few minutes before stopping. She closed the lid quietly and stood up. Her eyes were wet. The sound had awakened something inside her, something she had buried for years. The next morning, Clara came downstairs early and found Maria cleaning near the dining room. The girl still looked upset. "Good morning, Miss Clara," Maria said softly. Clara sighed. "I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the recital. Everyone expects me to be great, but I'm just not." Maria smiled gently. "Sometimes when we stop trying to be great and just listen to the music, it becomes easier." Clara frowned. "You sound like my teacher." Maria said nothing more. She kept dusting the table, humming a soft tune under her breath. It was a melody Clara didn't know, but something about it made her pause. "What song is that?" she asked. "Oh, just something I used to hear a long time ago," Maria replied quickly. She didn't meet Clara's eyes. Clara shrugged and walked away, but the melody stayed in her mind all day. In the evenings, the mansion often came alive with guests. The master of the house liked to host small gatherings with wine, laughter, and music. Maria would move quietly between the rooms, carrying trays of food unnoticed. The guests always praised Clara's efforts when she played a short piece for them, though she sometimes stumbled on a note or two. They called her promising, but she felt the weight of their polite smiles. Maria noticed everything: the way Clara's hands shook, the way her father forced a proud smile, the way her mother sighed quietly. It reminded Maria of her younger self long before she became a maid. Years ago, in a different town, Maria had lived another life. She had been a student at a music school, full of hope and passion. Her teacher used to say she played like she was speaking to angels. She had dreamed of concert halls and bright lights. But then her father fell ill, her family lost everything, and she had to leave her studies. The piano, her closest friend, had become a luxury she could no longer afford. Life carried her from one job to another, one city to the next, until she ended up here, in a house with a piano she could not touch. But the music never truly left her. It lived quietly inside her, waiting. One day, while cleaning the sitting room, Maria found a sheet of music lying on the floor. It had Clara's name written in neat letters at the top. She picked it up and studied the notes, her eyes following the melody like an old friend. She couldn't help whispering the rhythm softly as she dusted. When Clara walked in, Maria quickly put the paper back. "You can read music?" Clara asked, surprised. Maria froze for a moment. "A little," she said shyly. "I used to learn when I was young." Clara tilted her head.
"Really? You mean you played?"
Maria nodded. "A long time ago. I was not very good," she lied with a gentle smile. Clara laughed. "Well, I could use the help. I keep messing up this left-hand part." Maria wanted to say she could show her that her fingers still remembered the way, but she held back. She was a maid, not a teacher. "You'll get it, Miss Clara," she said softly. "Just give it time." That night, Maria dreamed of the piano again. In her dream, she was on a stage, playing beneath golden lights. The sound was clear and full, like water running through her veins. When she woke up, her heart was racing. The next morning, something changed. Clara began practicing earlier than usual, and Maria found herself listening even more closely. She noticed things others didn't: the way Clara's tempo rushed when she got nervous, how her shoulders tensed before a difficult passage. Maria whispered small corrections under her breath as she mopped the floor. "Slow down, breathe. Left hand softer," she murmured, though Clara couldn't hear her. And then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Clara's teacher canceled their lesson at the last minute, and the girl sat alone at the piano, staring at the keys in frustration. Maria passed by the open door. She hesitated, then stepped closer. "If you don't mind," she said quietly, "may I show you something?" Clara looked surprised, but nodded. Maria walked slowly to the piano, wiped her hands on her apron, and sat down. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. She played just a few bars, the same passage Clara had been struggling with. The notes came out smooth and graceful, every sound full of feeling. Clara's eyes widened. You play beautifully," she whispered. Maria smiled shyly, her cheeks warm. "It has been many years. The piano remembers more than I do." For the first time, Clara looked at Maria not as a maid, but as something else, someone who carried a quiet kind of greatness. Maria stood up quickly, embarrassed. "Forgive me, Miss Clara, I should not have—" But Clara shook her head. "No, please. Will you show me again tomorrow?" Maria hesitated, then nodded once. As she walked back to the kitchen, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, she had touched the keys without fear. She didn't know that this small moment would change everything. That one night soon, the whole world inside that house would finally hear the music she had kept hidden for so long.